Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression. Welcome back to another episode of the Compression Podcast. You know, I think that I need to get my DJ voice on every time that I do that, and I wonder what people think about that. It's always funny. I was listening to some other folks. They're like, I have a face for radio. And and
people can be mean.
Yeah, and it was funny because these guys are super successful and not bad looking guys by any means, but they have these nice radio voices. And I listen to myself, and I got this new mic, which I definitely sound better, but sometimes I want to put my radio voice on. And welcome to the Compression Podcast. My wife heard me on the first time we did our intro, and she just laughed at me. She was like, no, like, that's not your voice. And it's like, okay, well, let me go back and redo it again. I still kept a little bit of it in there, but you got to have a little bit of fun with it. So really exciting, man. It's been an interesting few weeks here in Kansas City and in our lives. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. And I'm going to catch everyone up on some really cool, interesting things that have happened. One of them is me crying in front of a lot of people. And so I'm going to tell you how that went. So stay tuned for that. And it's a win as well. So we'll get into that. But the intentionality. Okay. So intentionality for today's episode. First off, we eclipsed the $80 million mark. So we are at 80.1 million worth of transactions done this year. It just blows my mind. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm very excited about that. Pipeline is super full. And we've got some deals to close before the end of the year. And the $100 million mark is looking really, really good. But to hit that $80 million mark, that 8, I've been trying to get to that level for a couple of months, and we're finally there. And I know that $20 million worth of real estate sounds like a lot, but when you are focused on filling the pipeline all the time, it's an expectation now. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is reframing reality. The differences that your expectations and the attachment of the meaning that you have to those expectations can change your life. And I've been doing a lot. I've been going deep. I've had to go deep. And I'm going to talk about why most recently. But I also, when we get into times like the beginning of the fourth quarter and, sprints, I like to get inspired and motivated. I say that, you shouldn't be motivated. You should be inspired. But sometimes outside influences such as YouTube videos or listening to certain folks or doing certain things can get you really motivated. And that's really cool if that, translates to being inspired. And so I've been doing a lot of that recently. Here's the thread that I've been finding from really successful people is, I think one of the secrets to success is grit, is being able to reframe what hard times or failures or challenges actually mean. And if you expect this journey of becoming the better version of yourself to be easy, that's incorrect, and you're not going to be able to sustain. But if you listen to successful people, it is not a linear path. Okay. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down, to the tune of many of these folks losing everything. Prime example, Ed Milet, losing everything and having to shower at the pool shower and take his clothes down to the pool shower in the apartment complex that he lived in because he had his water turned off. So that's real. I mean, that's a real thing that has happened to many individuals. So this week, you're going to hear how I have reframed my reality, changed my expectations to say, hey, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be difficult. And then the meaning towards that is not negative. It's actually positive. Because if you're doing big things and you're becoming and stretching and changing, the expectation needs to be that that's not going to always feel good. And so when those feelings come, if you can attach the right meaning and say, there you are, now you're showing up, there it is, you can say, okay, let me embrace this. Now, there's two different things to unpack here. The first one being is there's legitimate things that, habits that you are doing right now that you shouldn't be. Okay. Like eating the potato chips, staying up too late, drinking too much alcohol, all of the stuff. But if you have your success routines and you're doing the right activities and the negativity or the challenges are still coming, then you can attach a meaning to say, okay, that's the frog I got to eat. That's the thing that I've got to take care of. And, Jerome knows this in the business that we're in, dealing with a lot of people. I mean, we have over, 1,500 to 2,000 people that live in our properties. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be hard times that you have to be able to get through, but that's expected now. And so I've been able to reframe my reality to say, all right, even though all these tough things are going, they're not blinding me anymore. They're not blinding me anymore. We've got a system, we've got people, and we are attacking those challenges. I can honestly say last year at this time, and this is me going on record, maybe not this time last year, but the fourth quarter of last year, with the growth that we had, with everything that was going on, I would say our operations were in the bottom 10% of operators out there. And what I can say now, where we're at now, we are in the top 10% of operators. And that took 12 months of dedication, of hiring, of transitioning a property management company, of putting systems in place, of a lot of difficult conversations. We still cash flowed through those periods, but it was 3 guys and an admin doing the operations before, and now we've got 12 people. And so that gives me a lot of confidence that we can head through these challenges that we're going through as well. And so I've been able to reframe this reality, Jerome, this week, setting the right expectations with myself and actually putting a meaning towards those. And that takes time. It takes time mentally, it takes time, quiet time, but things that used to stop me in my tracks and, so to speak, kind of blind me from being able to continue to move forward. And I couldn't do anything until I actually got this one thing fixed. Well, I can't fix it. And so if I'm not moving forward, but I'm trying to fixate on this thing that I can't fix, and it's not a problem that's going to be fixed in the moment, then I'm not going to move forward because I'm not focused on growth. And so what I've been able to do is remove that from my mind the last couple of weeks and continue to move forward. So I think that you'll hear through this episode today how to kind of reframe reality and set the right expectations and attach the correct meanings to those expectations. And man, when you do, you can be congruent. And when you can be congruent, you have confidence. And when you have confidence, you cannot be stopped. And so, man, I feel like even though I've got challenges, even though we're working through things, the confidence level that I have and with the team that we have in place and the strategies that we're putting in place is second to none. And, right before we started recording, we're talking about all these other people doing big things. And I just wonder if some of these folks have gone through some of the challenges and things that we have, because,
Nope.
it's all rosy.
All
right
been
now.
good, baby. We're
good.
shiny, good as gold. And the most impressive thing about that 80 million is the cost basis, right? The price per door, The
It's
ability to go in and add value and see upside. I don't think people are really understanding what's happening here,
yeah.
because the 80 million is in acquisitions is worth more,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's an equity game.
It's the
So
equity game, man. I mean, I was just in Austin, Texas, so one of my wins. So we'll talk through this, but I was in Austin, Texas, with a bunch of real estate folks and capital raisers across the country, and many of them have said like, "Well, Logan, what's the goal for your portfolio?" I said, "I don't know. I mean, I could turn around and sell my portfolio for probably a $30 million gain right now, $30 to $40 million gain right now," and their eyes just kind of popped. I'm like, "Yeah, that's the difference between buying at the top and buying with a margin of safety." And it's not something that we're not evaluating, but I'm not really in the business of just kind of flipping my portfolio. This thing is for growth, for long term, but I legitimately have a cost basis in our portfolio. And this is what our investors, I think, understand about us is we're bottom feeders, man. And we're going to stay bottom feeders because that is the level of security that we have to have in our portfolio. And so what I've seen, and I had a great meeting yesterday that I'm going to talk about. What I have seen is, many folks kind of, jumping in the bandwagon in some of these big markets and doing, big things. But you look at their transaction size, it'll be 175 units, but it'll be, $20 million. We buy 162 units, it's $8 million, and so sure, it's older product, it's in Kansas City, but their product is not 7 times better than ours. It's just not. It's not 6 to 7 times better than ours. And so, I think I was the only one there with kind of a portfolio similar to ours. And I tell you what, I garnered more attention through the way that we have acquired. And when people asked me, I was the only one that got up there and accepted a $10 million equity raise award. And they asked me how I did it. And I said, I found good deals. Nobody else said that. Everybody else said, well, I built a brand. I built an online presence. I talked to a lot of people. Sure, that's important. But I said, we did good deals and we found good deals. And so we've set kind of an expectation with our investors that, even though there's big transactions happening in Kansas City, everybody's asking me about them. Sure, yeah, they are, but they're double what we paid less than 12 months ago. And so that was a big win for me. Was the first win is showing up at this conference. And I didn't realize it until like the third day I was there. But I was sort of like a semi-celebrity at this thing. And people were like, oh man, I've been following you. And these guys are doing big things, and they're like, I'm following you. You're the one guy I wanted to make sure that I talked to at this conference. And I made some really great connections, which was cool. And I didn't even have to wear a name tag around there. Now, people had to get used to the new haircut. That's for sure, because I cut all my hair off. But that didn't take too long. So, but I didn't know most of those folks at the level that they already felt like they knew me. And so one big takeaway, I had some really big takeaways, but one of them was our online brand presence is really, really strong. And it's a part of this compression podcast. It's a part of everything else that we're doing. But I always try to attach an ROI to a task that I'm doing. And it's hard to attach to it like every single podcast that I've guested on, right? Like people don't reach out to me every day and say, man, I watched that podcast. But what they do see is, dude, how are you putting out 3 to 5 podcasts a week? And, and so I think that's a part of it, right? Just that activity levels, which was really interesting. The second big win was getting up in front of that group and speaking. I had a great presentation. Jerome really pressed me not to use my notes. And, I had him up there and I use them a little bit, but I spoke from the heart a lot. And when I started telling my story, I had no idea this was going to happen, but started talking about my dad. And what got me was the point of the conversation where I said, my father has never met my wife and has never met my children. And it was like this wave of emotion. I'm getting my hair is sticking up on my arm right now. I've got the goosebumps just thinking about that. And like this whole wave of emotion just hit me. It was just like a ton of bricks. Like, dude, that is your fire right there. That is your fire that burns so inside of you, so freaking strong, is because you are so afraid that you never want to be in that position that your children say, I never knew my dad's dad, or you get the idea. I might have said that incorrectly, but the idea was that my father has never met the most important person in my life and the other two most important people in my life. And, that just, everybody was kind of looking down. Previously to that, I had a good start, a strong start. But when I said that, all eyes up, 270-pound man, 6'3" in front of you, crying, choked up during a conference. Nobody expected that. Nobody expected Mr. Kansas City to be up there and being that raw and authentic. And I connected with that group of people on a different level than anybody else did that weekend. There were some great presenters and some great talks and all of that. And I could have talked about anything, but I wanted to make sure that they understood who I was and where I was coming from. And it was just so clear. I got a moment of clarity. I got through it and I finished the presentation. It was great. But it was all about being an icon, right? Having integrity, confidence, omnipresence, and telling your story. And I'll tell you what, one guy left that conference that weekend, not one, probably two, because obviously Hunter, who put it on, was very iconic all weekend long. I got to spend a lot of time with him, but there was one other guy that left there as an icon, and I'm proud to say it was me. So it's a huge win, man. So that's the story that I know that you hadn't gotten yet that I wanted to share with you. But it was a big eye-opening experience for me, and it kind of solidified my why in what I'm doing and why I burn so brightly, or that fire burned so brightly inside of me, man. It just was like, it was a cool moment because like this moment of emotion, but also clarity, all at the same time, that I took away more from my presentation than I think most other people did, man. It was pretty cool.
I don't know if that's true, but it did force you to reflect, right? And
Yeah.
in that space, you were able to open up. So Logan sends a text. I lost it during my presentation. We've been going back and forth that morning. He's like, I lost it. And I'm like, okay. Like, what is he doing? And so I had to wait all week to get the rest.
Yeah.
But I do think it was iconic. And I do believe it's those moments that are remarkable. Sure, the money's great. Sure, the deals are great. Sure, the strategy's great. But do you know the person, and do you know what fuels a fire? Because that's what leads to predictability. And I know you had some stuff in there about trust. So I think it's outstanding that they got that type of exposure, because most people are scared to show who they are.
Yeah.
Right. They're scared to, they think that the investors won't appreciate or like that. And you show up that way and you give it to them. And if they don't like it, see ya.
Yep.
It's okay. We're just not the right people to go into this type of partnership.
That's right. What's elevating me, and I keep hearing this quote, you will never exceed the level in your business than your personal growth, right? Like, you just won't exceed that. Yeah. And so I keep hearing that in different people's talks and things that I read and listen to. Great podcast, by the way. It's called Motive 8. So you write motive and then the number 8. This guy basically takes Tom Bilyeu, David Goggins, Ed Milet, Brian Tracy, and puts them on some music. I love that stuff. I sometimes don't have time for a 40-minute podcast, which is even 20 minutes, because I listen at 1.8 now. I got my head listening to little chipmunks in my head. You're going, and I can actually catch it now, which is pretty cool. But I listen to that Motive 8 stuff where he pulls out these takeaways from these talks. It's just a great podcast on Spotify or something like that. Go listen to that. That's been really fun for me to listen to some of these. And that's what I keep hearing, though, is your business is never going to exceed the level of personal growth that you go through. And that's that's a confidence builder for me. And something that I know I can continue to focus on. And I see show up when I start to communicate and when I'm talking with investors and or new potential partners. And everybody's interested in looking at me and saying, hey, you're 31 and how are you talking at this level? What, I mean, how deep actually are you? And then they'll pose a question to me, and then I won't shut up about it. And I go deep, and they're like, okay, dude. All right, good, man. Like, you've obviously done the work, you know what I mean? But once they do, boom, status tip off. I go from 31 to 51, wherever somebody I'm meeting with, because they're like, oh my gosh, man, if I could only do what you're doing at your age, man, I would be at a different level. So then they have this own little realization of themselves, but then we're on the same level. Now we're congruent. Now our status is the same level. I don't care how much money you have, what you've done. The work has been done here and is continuing to be done on a regular basis. I can't tell you how many times people said, man, what time do you go to bed? What time do you get up? Or how do you get up that early? Because everybody knows I'm the commercial real estate guy that gets up at 3:30 in the morning. And I've kind of branded myself as this early morning guy. And it just piques a lot of people's interest. Like, do you not go to bed or do you go to bed at 8:00? I'm like, well, sometimes, but not usually, it's usually between 9 and 10. But I eat clean. I drink a lot of water. I breathe in the morning. I tell them my morning routine. They're like, my gosh, man. And so that's reigned true. That thread of personal growth has reigned true through my conversations. I had an investor in from New York City, New York State, not New York City, this week. And I brought our new investor relations person with me for 5 hours on the tour with me while I was going through some projects. We're going to do a 1031 exchange with this guy. And I found an off-market deal that I took him to, but just drive him around the city. I just heard my investor relations guy behind me in our Tahoe, and I just heard the notes just going like, I mean, when he got out, when I dropped him back off at the office, I said, so what'd you think? He looked exhausted because he was just trying to keep up with everything that was coming out of my head. And I said, that's the level that I got to get you at. That's the level I got to get you at. And I played golf with him yesterday, and I said, hey, I said this without saying this, but I said, hey, you're 27 and I got 4 years on you. But at the same time, if I was 27, I was getting married just like you are, just like I was back then, you are in a group of men and women that will pull you up. And this kid I say he's a kid. He's only 4 years younger than me, but he's my baby sister's 3 years younger than me. And I call her a kid still too. I'm still a freaking kid. But, what I tried to impart on him was personal, professional growth are tied together, and all 100%. Of the outcomes are absolutely tied to how much better you get. And this guy is so committed. I mean, he is so committed. I think he may be he will redefine the investor relations role in this industry. One, because he's right underneath me. Two, because he's way better at systemizing, because he does not have the space in his brain yet to be able to the capacity that I've had, because I've got 7 years of this stuff. So he's systemizing it and making it repeatable, which I need those people around me all the time, because I fly and they write and they go make things repeatable. But, setting a goal with him, like, hey, we can redefine this role and we can be completely different than everybody else. And you need to be the Kansas City guy that says, hey, we need a deal funded. I got to call Lee. I got to call FTW. I got to call these guys because I know that they can get it done. And so I'm sitting there at a meeting yesterday with a guy. I had 2 interesting meetings this week, both Wall Street guys that have now gotten into the commercial real estate space. One that is creating liquidity, secondary liquidity for real estate sponsors like myself and for REITs. Very cool stuff. He actually started the BATS. It'd be like the Dow Jones, but it's a trading, situation. And he started that in here in the US, and then also started the largest European trading, scenario for bonds and securities, which is just crazy. But I met with him. Then I met with a guy that is at a company that has done all kinds of institutional money. And, I think their level of sophistication is different because it's a Wall Street kind of MBA approach. And then they see 3 guys that have just kind of Midwest guys are just kind of throwing this thing together,
playing in the dirt.
But we're also being able to talk with them and understand what they're talking about. And they're like, that's interesting, and you just hear the threads because we're talking about the right things. You just see the wheels start spinning. And so one of the big wins from this week is those guys get the big investors in Kansas City. They get the Gary Fishes, the Brandon Myers, the Lipperts, all of those guys, because they have some sort of background in tech. But then if I get in those networks, those investors start looking at what we've got going on. So the network building piece has been really strong the last 2 months that we've been focused on this. It's going to continue to be very strong, and it needs to be. And I have another one of those meetings today, which I'm very excited about as well. But I was telling Lee yesterday, and Lee's our investor relations guy, said opportunities are attached to people. They do not just float out there by themselves. They're attached to people. And how you show up is how readily available those opportunities are going to become towards you. So right now you need to be a sponge. You need to spend every minute that you can with me. And I'm committed to doing that. But you have to understand that you have to be talking at this type of level to be able to get these investors, confident with you. So then you get to a different level because you've even got 4 years below me. And, so at the end of the day, man, I think that one of the big wins from this is that there's not many people I can't necessarily get to in Kansas City. And as my network grows, I'm doing what I've always done. I'm adding value, and just staying in touch and in front of, and never asking until the right moment when something happens where it makes sense or somebody reaches out to you. And so that's very, exciting to see this network building focus actually bringing some fruits to the table, which is really great, man. So that was another big win for us this week. That meeting with Lee yesterday on investor relations, I came out so clear. I got an active campaign CRM set up. We've got about 900 investors that we need to get into our pipeline. And we've got tasks for every single one of them. They will be categorized, tagged, and created into the right stage that they need to be in. And we're going to be working on all of those investors at the right time. So I'm very excited about the process that we're putting in place on investor relations and on marketing. In an hour yesterday, I pulled up 5 or 6 Twitter influencers in the commercial real estate space, and I'm modeling what they've done. I didn't know anything yesterday about a pinned tweet or replying to your own tweets or taking my blog and then making a tweet thread every single week to that. So we've got a new Twitter strategy in place, and that's already automated. I got the team working on that. They know exactly what to do. Lee's going to break down the blogs every single week and put them on a sheet. And then our social media manager is going to get on and make sure that those get posted. So it's just awesome things to see. I felt very, very accomplished yesterday after that meeting that I had with Lee, and then having the team behind it that, hey, I don't have to go do that. It's already going to be in the process and in the queue, and I can trust that gets done. So that's super exciting, man. Got some new deals, got a hotel conversion going on here in Kansas City, in an opportunity zone, historical tax credits, affordable housing, working with Restart. I mean, the whole thing is just awesome. That's going under LOI, or is under LOI, going under contract. Got a new big deal out in Des Moines, Iowa. Super stoked about this project. 2015 build. Come on now. 2015 build at just over $100,000 a door. I mean, come on. That stuff just does not happen in a market like that. Rents are at $1,200. I mean, just feeling super excited about that project. I do not see those projects happening. It would be a Class A deal, but it's stick build, so it's Class B, but it's B plus. It's from the developer, and so developers are historically not the best operators. They're good builders, and so all of the things have come to fruition. Our management company already has 500 units in that market. It's just really exciting to have 2 new projects that are going under LOI, and some big pipeline of projects here, coming up here very soon as well. Network building. All right, so I get a call yesterday from a guy that I don't know if you guys know who Sam Zell is. Sam Zell drives motorcycles and shows up at Steven Schwartzman's office and in leather and his jeans and smoking cigarettes and sells his office portfolio to him for billions of dollars. But at the end of the day, I wonder if this guy that called me yesterday isn't Sam Zell, because my skepticism is high. But he's like, hey, that deal down on the plaza, man, I really want to go after that deal with you guys. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And I met this guy about 4 weeks ago, and I was like, I'm probably never going to talk to him again. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Just didn't feel like it was real. Get in my email, sends me a bank account with over 7 figures in it, and it says, hey, here's the earnest money deposit. Here it is. This is my LLC. And I'm like, well, this is becoming a little more real, and this actually may happen. And it's $50 million deal here in Kansas City. Still may not happen, right? We might not win the deal, may not all come together, but just that network building piece of somebody calling me and saying, hey, I want to do this deal with you. I know it's marketed. We got some capital we got to place, and I did not think that was even an option previously. So I'm going to vet that out. So got some great things working on the deal front side of things here at FTW as well. Talked about the Raise Masters, the speaking gig. Yeah, that's a big win. I'm gonna kind of go a little bit deeper on that here in a second. So, and talk about the next iteration of what FTW looks like. Being there for T, it's been a tough week for her. I think, T needs to get out of the house. She needs to be out in the community. And I realize that I am every single day. I'm not cooped up in the house and I'm not doing all that stuff. I was gone for a couple of days, and I just needed to be there for her. They're going through some stuff at work and all of that, but just had to be present and listen and be empathetic. So I was definitely there for her on that side of things, and that felt really good. And I feel very connected to her right now as well. My kids are obsessed with me. It's just awesome to watch. Isabella's like, other than Taylor, she's like my best friend now, as well as my daughter. I mean, she is the most fun thing ever, is just hearing her talk and get excited about things and look for me, daddy. I mean, look for me. And I was thinking about this because of my talk at Raise Masters, but I was like, Isabella and Ezra and probably future children, you're lucky. And you are lucky because you have 2 parents that are going to not only pour into you, but just love you more than anything in this freaking world. And if I was thinking about my dad, and if I was my little boy self, so to speak, I just see myself, playing golf with Ezra and them wanting to be around me. I think that's the level of success that I want to create for my children. And I got turned on to this guy, Steve Weatherford. Don't know if you guys have listened to this guy. NFL football player, won a Super Bowl, quit at his prime because he had 3 children, I think, at the time, and now he has 5. He's on the front of like Men's Magazine. I mean, ripped. I can't tell you what he looks like. He looks like a Greek god. But he said, my children want to spend time with me. I think that's the level of success that you want to get to as a parent. You want to become the type of person that your children are like, man, I don't want to spend time with anybody else. I just want to be with my parents. And, I think I'm a cool dad, and I try to be that cool guy, but more than that, you got to be stable. And I want my children to know how stabilized and sustainable that I can be. And that just gives me a lot of inspiration. I've already seen it, the little twinkle in Isabella's eyes when she looks up at me, and I can tell I'm her first love, as a man. And I want to be that for a long time. Isabella, you're not dating until you're 21. Okay. I'm just that feeling, man. That feeling. So it's hard to communicate if you don't have children, but it is a feeling that is puts everything else in perspective. So last thing that I'll say on the win side of things. Okay. New markets, new asset classes, sure. But I've always felt like in this business, with the activity levels that I have put in and the people that I talk to and the things that I do, that I can stay 1 to 2 steps ahead of the market. I've got some insider trading information, so to speak. And what I am seeing as the next iteration for FTW investments as we grow is a different type of capital source. Okay, so that's the first one. I never want to say, I'm not going to focus on my retail investors. I think that's very important, but a different type of capital structure and source that allows me to basically have a suite of services for either newer operators or operators who are not maybe as ingrained in the digital marketing and social media space that we are, and they don't have the back end, or they do not want to have the back end operations that we actually have. What was apparent to me was, hey, Logan, how many times I got asked, hey, Logan, how is your company set up? What are the people's roles? How did you hire them? What do they do? Oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. There's like this whole kind of mental decision framework that they went through. They said, why do you do it that way? Well, I think this is the iteration, right? Is I can now build relationships with people in the Carolinas, in Florida, in certain parts of Texas, in Ohio, and I can feel comfortable knowing that I trust that operator, but then that I have the back end suite of services, whether that be debt, equity, operations, construction, you name it, asset management, that I can bolster on and bring a lot more value than a lot of these other folks in the space are going to be able to do. So I'm going to say it here right now on the Compression Podcast. I think 2022 will be another breakout year for our company, a massive breakout year. We've had to go deep this year. Sure, we've done 5, 6, 7 projects this year, but we're going to have to go really we had to go really deep into our operations this year, and being able to scale is a certain part will be hindering just in the Midwest. So the next iteration, I think, is identifying the 10 to 12 partners across the country and being able to build those relationships with them and bring them a suite of services, whatever they need, if they can do one thing, and that is bring true off-market deals that have a margin of safety. That is my only qualification that I have for these people. You cannot bring me a marketed deal or a deal that's going to market in 2 weeks, because I'm not interested in that. What I need is, hey, I'm doing a project across the street. It's a 100-unit deal, and I was there the other day. We were walking units. We were doing some construction, and this property owner walked over from across the street that's 65, 75 years old and said, hey, guys, thank God you guys are doing something to that property. It really needed some upkeep. Oh, and by the way, I own that 150-unit apartment complex across the street for the last 25 years. I'm interested in, maybe exiting here in the next year or two. Would you guys want to take a look at what I've got going on? Absolutely. That is just not happening anymore in the space, because those guys know that they can go broker their deals, which is, that's going to be a portion of it. But if an operator, if somebody, not an operator, if somebody can bring those types of opportunities to me, and I can identify folks who have a foothold like I have in Kansas and in Missouri, and they can bring that same foothold to me in Carolinas, in Texas, in Florida, and Arkansas, and they're doing what I'm doing on the ground, they just need more capacity. I think I can identify 10 to 12 of those folks and really start to do projects at a much higher level that have not a higher level of a higher level of velocity, and be able to scale. So I got to do a lot on that. Operationally, we got to hire a couple more folks, which we are. But I have to go figure out how to have $100 million worth of equity that can be ready to be deployed into different opportunities. So that's the next iteration of FTW investments. We're very interested in, and I've kind of teased this a little bit. I've got some partners now, family office, who's willing to put the capital up and do the horizontal improvements on projects. And I have to solve for the vertical, either selling it to a developer and or finding the right builder and developing it ourselves. So that's an interesting new vertical for us as well. And then we are getting into the lower density multifamily and single family home space, kind of buy for rent. So not build for rent, but buy for rent. So I'll go buy a house for $50,000. I will rent that house out for $850, and we will hold that in a portfolio of homes and duplexes and townhomes and 6-unit properties, and have a bucket of capital that wants that type of product that allows us to have capital ready available to go deploy. I've identified the right operator. I've identified the gentleman who does the general contracting and the deal flow. And so I put that in place. It's been 6 months for me to find that here in Kansas City. He's done this multiple times, and I feel very good about that strategy. So that's kind of the next iteration of FTW is different capital structures, partners, and different types of assets that we're going to be going after. And so I don't hear a lot of people talking about those three things right now. And even if they are talking about them, they're not putting the activity levels and the team in place to actually go implement that. And so I think 2022 is going to be a good year in regards to debt still. I think we have a big opportunity to capitalize on that. And the last thing I'll say just briefly is the other iteration is going to be doing a lot of 1031 exchanges and being an absolute leader in the Midwest, not Kansas, not just Kansas or Missouri, but hey, you got a 1031 exchange. I got to call Logan and his team. I got to get that placed in a tenancy in common, or I got to get that placed in a brokerage deal, and being able to have an off-market kind of pipeline of projects for those folks. I've got everything else already set up. So that could be very interesting revenue center. And I'm very close to having what I need in place to do that. It's going to be 3 people at a minimum doing that, and a ton of marketing and a ton of new resources. So, man, I got a lot of wheels are spinning, got a lot of new ideas, but I feel very confident about executing on some of those. It's going to be a lot of work, but you can see after I've gone through kind of the quarterly planning and then doing the Raise Masters conference and then talking and then thinking a lot, I've got a new plan, new ideas, got multiple revenue streams that I think can really blow our business up and go from $100 million in transactions to $500 million in transactions in 1 year. And so that's the plan. That's the big win, is clarity. That's the number one thing here, guys, is a clarity that I have on how to actually achieve where I want to go. So I'm going to stop there, man, because I talked a lot. And I know there's a lot to unpack there. And that was just the win section. Didn't even talk about losses or learning yet. And I want to give you a minute to process all that and any comments you've got.
Congrats on the deal. Nobody's buying that vintage property for that amount. Yeah. And your rent to price per door ratio is outstanding for that quality of product. I want to make sure people connect the dots. So this fund, this $100 million fund you've been teasing for the past couple of months,
yep,
is the catalyst for the back end services, right? So right. You're able to drive deal flow. And so everybody out there who's like, oh man, I can't raise the money, or how do I find a partner? It's a co-GP structure.
Yep.
Where you run the operations, they bring the deal, but they're valuable to you because they have access to a deal and their boots on the ground.
Absolutely.
If you don't have net worth liquidity, the thing that you bring that makes you valuable to folks who are moving and shaking and doing deals is the deal.
That's right.
And getting that thing contracted and having certainty of close is the game changer.
At the right price.
I've watched somebody blow up their business this year, and particularly the deal finder, she is going to do an insane amount of fee because she's been able to find deals that nobody else had access to.
I know.
In addition to that, she went and got portfolios.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy. The 1031 angle. So before you blew up the portfolio, 1031 was your game.
That's right.
In brokerage.
That's right.
And so to spin back and double down on that, the point here, ladies and gentlemen, is Logan isn't all over the place. He's doubling down on things that he's already done, or reapplying a strategy that he's seen work in a different vein into his new focus.
Yep.
And you don't have to go do a bunch of stuff. Like once you find something that works, double down, double down, double down. The thing that I wanted to learn more about, because it's the first time I heard it, is the Twitter strategy. So is the following on Twitter big? Are you finding that your biggest investors are sitting there? Because my angle would be to double down on LinkedIn. You've put so much effort into it. You've become an influencer, such a big following. People are peeking in and checking on you. You're having some of those posts go to the moon and others that you think are amazing not do so well.
Right.
But one thing's very clear. You're getting more reach there than you are on Instagram,
Absolutely,
Facebook, or I think
combined.
anywhere else. So what's the game? What's the focus and why Twitter?
Yeah. LinkedIn will not stop. We will continue to dominate LinkedIn every single day, and working with Lee on getting his LinkedIn strategy going. So got him into Brian Briscoe's, weekly Friday thing. He's already made some good connections. So I want to make sure I clarify, LinkedIn will still be our number one focus 100% of the time. However, I was listening to some guys and gals at Raise Masters that have had extreme success on Twitter. And they said, hey, who should I be following? So they sent me 15 handles. Then I went and just reviewed what those guys have, and the engagement that they have on Twitter is absolutely incredible. And Twitter, you get older people on Twitter. That's what you get. So you get more seasoned investors on Twitter that may not even know that they're investors. And so they search certain hashtags, and it's not everybody, but there is a subset of a subset that focuses on searching hashtags if they're interested, and they use Twitter to learn. And then they follow people who are putting content out around that strategy. And so I don't think it's necessarily one that we have two phases of Twitter. First phase is just starting, because right now we're just reposting things on Twitter and it's not working. So all right, well, let's get our blogs that we put out on a regular basis. They're catchy. They get people's attention. The last one that went out yesterday got 9 responses from investors right back in my inbox 2 seconds after they went out. So I know people are reading them. So we'll take a headline, 160 character headline, put it in there, and then we'll reply with some main salient points from the post and just reply to that, have a thread every single week with the right hashtag. So people are searching that stuff, they can then find us. So we're going to do that for 3 months. And then after those 3 months, we're going to say, hey, what got engaged with, what didn't? How do we actually start replying to those people? And so what I found, and I know 2 guys being very successful on Twitter and on Reddit. I'm not going to Reddit yet. I'm just trying to figure out the Twitter strategy right now and see if it's worth implementing. On top of that, it's very easy because Lee needs to read those blogs anyways, for him to pick out the headline and all of the reply tweets, and it's a learning process for him. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. He gets to learn because he's reading the blogs, and we also repurpose kind of that content into Twitter threads. So it's just something we're going to try and see what the engagement looks like, and see if we want to put more focus there. And if we need to put a resource to actually start replying to people who engage with us, fantastic. But right now it's just going to be a new posting strategy is all.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense because that's Naval Ravikant. I feel like he's only on Twitter.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like people are playing a different game there. And, one thing we talked about earlier this week, and maybe it's coming, we'll run out of time, but you talked about there being some raises that you got to get done.
Yep.
And, you talked about getting Lee trained up, which is, number 1 on this list of things that you want to work through. But we haven't talked about your raises at all. So is there time for that, or you want to wait till next week?
Yeah, we'll wait till next, because I got a whole strategy around that that I want to talk through, that I think it'll be beneficial. And I'm not quite there because I'm trying to balance the educational webinar for this month, 2 other deals that will be coming live, and an educational piece about a submarket analysis of Des Moines. And I gotta schedule all of those things out. And I don't want to overload our investors. So what I did was yesterday, I wrote a letter from the principals that I do maybe quarterly. Right now, people love those. Just kind of a snapshot of, hey, where we're at, what we're focusing on. And I'm going to be priming people to say, hey, over the next 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to engage with us. There's going to be 2 new projects. There's 2 new educational pieces of content. So just be aware that this stuff is coming to fruition. And so I got some feedback from the team. I sent that to them yesterday. I got some strike throughs and some red lines that I got to go fix, but that will go out next week to try to prime the investor list to be ready for the next opportunities. And then I'll come prepared in the following weeks to talk about how we're going to launch these 2 new projects and the other strategic initiatives that we've been talking about here.
Outstanding.
All right. So losses, I only have one really big loss, man. And it's that I'm spent, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. My stress levels throughout the day are, I don't have enough baked into my calendar to just have time to breathe. So I'm back to kind of not all the meetings per se, but now I have internal people that I have to pour into on a regular basis. So trying to balance my stress levels, and it's not like bad stress. It's just, I'm on for 13 hours, and so I have to make sure that I get some time back in my calendar in the middle of the day and probably 3 p.m. just to breathe. And I got to get that back in my time, even if it's just 15 minutes. I got to get that back in my schedule. So that was my big loss. Is just been running at 1,000 miles per hour and not giving myself enough time throughout the day to decompress and just breathe and refocus and recenter myself. So I'm going to work on that.
Yeah. Are you putting buffers in between your meetings? Are you giving yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
No, not right now. Nope.
Okay. So the one thing that I think may be beneficial is instead of starting all your meetings at the top or the bottom of the hour, go to 15-minute starts.
Yep.
And then put a 15-minute window on the back side of every meeting. That way, if you go over, great. If you don't go over and it ends on time, and I mean, you can decide that at the beginning of the meeting, whether you want to end on time or not.
Yeah.
Then you have time to go to the bathroom, breathe. Just, it gives you an opportunity and you're not forced in losing it. The other thing that I did, man, is I don't schedule 60-minute meetings anymore. I schedule 50-minute meetings, or I schedule 25-minute meetings. And then that gives you that buffer for going over. And then you also have some type of buffer on the backside. And I just think that will give you what you need without being in a space where you're losing opportunities to actually see people. You still have as many, shots, but you're compressing the time, right? Because what is it, Parkinson's law? It expands to fill the time. That last 10 minutes of most meetings is usually wasted.
Sure.
On an hour meeting, that last 5 minutes and the 30-minute, you're just kind of filling the space. Oh, I don't have anything to do. It forces people to be succinct when you crunch them down.
Yeah, and one thing I could take from Oren Klopp and that is just set the tone at the beginning. Hey, we got 35 minutes here, and right at the end of this 35 minutes, I've got to, get ready for my next thing. And so just setting those expectations, I think, at the beginning of the meeting. I've done that in the past, and that's been helpful to make sure that people are succinct and they respect that time, right? So I gotta get back to doing that. So learnings, had a lot of learnings. We've talked a lot about them already, but the biggest one is when you are in a period of time where everybody else might be contracting and what isn't working, doesn't feel like what you're doing is working, you got to add more fuel to the fire. That's one thing that I know is you got to add more fuel to the fire. And we are adding a ton of fuel to the fire right now. We're all the while, it feels like, hey, we need to pull back. Actually, it's a cognitive bias. You got to pour back in. And so we are pouring back in. I've got some cool things that are happening on that front, but I'm going to leave everybody with this today. And it's a book I just bought. Many people have recommended this book to me. And it's Angela Duckworth's book on grit. I've never read it. I think it's on my bookshelf back here. I got to get a Dewey Decimal System going on here now, guys, at this library, because I can't find any of my books. I got 100 books right here that you can't even see, and I got 600 behind me. I got to get a Dewey Decimal System going. So I'll do that sometime soon. Maybe that'll be a fun goal of mine to get my books classified, but especially into the ones I haven't necessarily read. But I was reading on grit right before we started this morning, because resiliency, perseverance, going through adversity, all this stuff, grit is something that continues to come to my mind. And so what is grit? Grit is passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And one way to think about grit is to consider what grit isn't. It isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't how intensely or for the moment you want something. Instead, grit is about having something that some researchers call an ultimate concern, a goal that you care about so much that it organizes and gives meaning to almost everything that you do. And grit is holding steadfast to that goal, even when you fall down, even when you screw up, even when progress towards that goal is halting or slow. Talent and luck matter to success, but talent and luck are no guarantee of grit. And in the very long run, I think grit may matter as least as much, if not more. And I want to make sure that people understand that you have to be gritty. We've had an episode just talking about sandpaper here. It was all, I think the thing was called sandpaper. And so grit is something that you have to realize you have to be successful, not in just business, but in life. So I want everybody out there to go and be gritty this week. Go get some and be gritty. Jerome, you have anything to add before we close today's session, man?
Just proud of you, man. Great week. Amazing things are happening. The work is paying off. And I think people are going to be really surprised how the end of the year goes, because right now we're getting ready to ramp up the 2-minute drill, baby.
Oh, yeah.
You're about to see efficiency that you haven't seen this year.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. And I wrote about the 2-minute drill on my letter from the principals, because I wanted to make sure that they understood that most touchdowns and field goals are in the last 2 minutes of the first half and the last 10 minutes of the game. And so you have to realize that you got to be willing to finish strong. So thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Compression Podcast. I hope you were able to rethink your own reality and reframe your own reality and the expectations you have on yourself and the meaning that you attach to those. I think we did a good job of detailing that process of how that happened for me over the last week. I'm excited to continue to bring new insights and challenges that we're going through every single week. So if you liked this, make sure to share it, comment on LinkedIn, share the post with somebody that needs to hear this message. And don't ever forget, you got to be gritty. Hey, compressors, if something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. Head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.